Before I get started, there's something I want to acknowledge. The episode titles in Friendship is Magic usually make references in one form or another, and most of the time I get it. But apparently the Season 3 finale, Magical Mystery Cure, was a Beatles reference that completely went over my head. I seriously had no clue here, and really shame on me for that because I do appreciate the Beatles. I just didn't know enough to be familiar with this. Thank you to everyone who pointed that out, and also thanks to Paul from That Guy with the Glasses for putting up his own review of the Beatles' Magical Mystery Tour the very next day. Now I feel like a complete idiot about this whole thing. Seriously though, thanks, you guys are awesome. Also, in my review of Games Ponies Play, I suggested that this Pegasus with the magenta eyes might be Rainbow Dash's mom. As it turns out, I was way off. She's actually a fairly regular background character who I really hadn't noticed before, and it's apparently just a coincidence that she was standing next to Rainbow and her dad during the scene. Anyway, on to the topic at hand. In my Season 3 lead-in video, I pointed out that this season was officially the first time the show was moving forward without any guidance from its creator, and many fans were understandably skeptical. And when all was said and done, the results were mixed. While it wasn't as good as Season 2, because frankly Season 2 was amazing, I would also argue that it wasn't as bad as many have made it out to be. I think right off the bat, the Crystal Empire helped set the tone for the entire season. While it suffered from spotty execution at times, it had a lot of great ideas. This episode still stands as having some of the most interesting magic that's ever been displayed on the show. In fact, that's part of the reason I was so underwhelmed by Magic Duel. You can't show Twilight doing this in the season premiere and then have her get winded by a simple levitation spell a few episodes later. But it still says a lot that even the worst episodes still had something really good worth mentioning, whether it was expanding on ideas introduced in previous seasons, or developing all new characters, or even just being visually creative and having great performances by the voice cast. Plus, the main characters each had some really great episodes. Twilight, of course, became an Alicorn princess, which was actually built up throughout the season as she began taking on more political assignments, whether it was helping out in the Crystal Empire, or even preparing entertainment for foreign delegates. Pinkie Pie had one of her best episodes since Party of One. Rainbow Dash had her best season so far as she began pursuing her dream more seriously and became a mentor for Scootaloo. Apple Family Reunion was a great Applejack episode, finally giving her something new to do and providing some fantastic development for the Apple family altogether. And while this technically doesn't count as a main character or a full episode feature, I'm still going to highlight Magical Mystery Cure for the return of Derpy. Given her notable absence following the incident in Season 2, I was convinced we would never see her on the show again. This moment caught me completely off guard and I cheered out loud. Meanwhile, Fluttershy... why'd she take her necklace off? Well, Spike, I don't even... Well, Rarity, maybe next time? So yeah, unfortunately, for all the good things I want to talk about, I did get a sense that the overall quality was dropping a little bit this season. And I'm not entirely talking about how certain characters were written poorly or how some episodes had bad lessons at the end. To be fair, that's not entirely unique to Season 3, though I did judge those aspects more harshly this time because I have less patience for them. But the main realization for me really hit during Spike at Your Service. There's a part where Spike, while trying to please Applejack, starts singing this really awkward song, and I immediately thought of an episode of The Critic where the main character Jay basically does the same thing. Except on that show, he then follows it up by saying, "Look, I don't know what this looks like to you. I've lost my ability to tell between what's cute and what's idiotic." And I think that was a big problem with this season. It had a lot of moments that try to be funny, but just end up being uncomfortable. And despite all of the obstacles that Lauren Faust dealt with on the show, the one thing she was absolutely adamant about was that she did not want it to be stupid. And unfortunately, it felt like it was beginning to cross that line more often here than in previous seasons. Interestingly though, while many fans believe the show suffered from Faust leaving, some of the biggest reactions this season were tied into her original intentions, and not in the way you might expect. While she insisted that Rainbow Dash couldn't be Scootaloo's big sister, this season said, you know what, let's do it anyway, and as a result, Sleepless in Ponyville is largely considered to be a fan favorite. Meanwhile, one of the most controversial moves, which resulted in many people swearing that they were leaving the fandom, was making Twilight a princess, and yet it turns out that's something Faust was actually planning to do all along. Now, maybe it would have played out differently had she still been in charge, but it's surprising how many fans were violently opposed to the idea itself, even after it was revealed by Faust that this was always going to be part of Twilight's destiny. Now, some people have brought up concerns like, what if Twilight has to leave her friends? What she's supposed to be the princess of? And what if the other characters are marginalized in future episodes? And those are all fine questions, but try to keep in mind that you're getting worked up over something that hasn't happened yet, and in some cases might not be an issue at all. Like I said in my review of the episode, we have no idea where this is going to go right now. But of course, then there's the other argument. Some people are actually complaining that there should be 2 of each kind of pony, and oh no, there aren't 2 unicorns anymore. What'll we do? I'm sorry, I thought everyone liked the show because of the characters, but I guess if one of them's technically not a unicorn anymore, then fuck it, why bother? Look, I know we all have certain things that we like to see on the show, but this is a very shallow argument. It has no real substance behind it. And frankly, if you're a fan and this is all it takes to make you leave the show, then I kind of feel sorry for you. Anyway, I've also heard some people say that it seemed like this season was mainly just setting things up for season 4, and in retrospect, it definitely feels that way. Games Ponies Play literally only exists to set up the Equestria games, and while I did end up leaning towards a positive opinion in my review, this will end up being one of the most pointless episodes ever if we don't actually see the Equestria games later. Star Swirl the Bearded continues to be a major driving force behind some of the episodes, and like I said back in Season 2, I'll be very surprised if we never get to see this character eventually. And of course, there's Discord being reformed so that Celestia can use them for some kind of project. At the time, knowing about Twilight's upcoming Alicorn transformation, I thought that's what Discord was going to do, but apparently that wasn't the case. So now I'm really curious what this special project is supposed to be. And keep in mind, while I wasn't crazy about the idea of Discord being reformed, I did go in wanting to like the episode. Unfortunately, it wasted too much time and didn't set up its ending very well. John Delancey has already hinted that Discord will be returning though, if the episode itself wasn't already enough of a clue, so hopefully this idea will be handled better in future episodes. And finally, I can't talk about the show without discussing the musical segments. Now right off the bat, the first musical segment, appropriately called the Failure Song, left me feeling underwhelmed, and I criticized it for not adding anything to the story. In response, I got a lot of comments saying that the songs don't need to contribute to the story as long as they sound nice. And you know something, damn it, you're absolutely right. In my review of the season finale, I said I've Got to Find a Way was the best Twilight song on the whole show so far, and yet it adds just as much or as little to the story as that first song in the Crystal Empire. I mean, we already know that everyone's sad and Twilight has to fix things, so by my own previous logic, that song has no reason to be there. But it was just so beautiful and emotional that I couldn't help but love it. Now first, let me say that I really don't think there are any bad songs on the show, with the possible exception of the Cutie Mark Crusaders theme song, which was made to be bad on purpose. But comparatively speaking, Twilight's Failure Song wasn't that good, which is part of why the redundant nature of it stood out so much. Beyond that, while most of the songs this season were fun to listen to, my main issue is that visually many of them weren't interesting to watch. The Ballad of the Crystal Empire had extended sequences where the characters just stood around bobbing their heads to the beat, and Bab Seed repeated so many visual sequences that it became distracting. Now again, none of this ever came off as being terrible, but it does stand out because it was never an issue in previous seasons. Of course, then Magical Mystery Cure came along, and as far as I'm concerned, that episode by itself made the entire season worthwhile. In the end, I have no idea why the season struggled in the way that it did. Perhaps there was added pressure as it was limited to 13 episodes. Perhaps it was a growing pain as the team had to adjust to a lack of input from Lauren Faust. Or perhaps it's something else that I can't even comprehend as I don't work in the animation industry. But despite all of the negative things I've said, I still think this show has more life and more potential than most other shows that are on right now. That's why I care so much, and why, despite its occasional shortcomings, I'm still a fan. I will happily continue to watch for those moments of greatness, and I'm very hopeful that as the show returns to its 26 episode format in season 4, that the production team will have even more room to make even more great episodes as the show continues.